Okay. So, for the next one, we are going to look at the official Four Nations rosters between Canada, US, Sweden, and Finland, and kind of just go through all of them. Take our. We're not going to rank them because me and Caleb already talked about it. We would end up having the same rankings, which is kind of boring.
Most likely.
Yeah, we'd
Yeah.
most likely have the same rankings. I think there is kind of a consensus on who's the best, who's the worst, who's the middle. But regardless, let's get into it. We're going to start right off at the top with the one that I think most people have talked about already, which is Team Canada. They obviously have a few big names left off of the list, like Connor Bedard. He was the big one a lot of people have been talking about. Obviously, not having the greatest starts of the year, but a lot of people were still shocked he was left off. And the fact that Canada really does not have terrific goaltending. That's been the conversation for more than a year at this point, because obviously Jordan Binnington, Aiden Hill, and Sam Montembeault, saying that right?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Are really not. They're good. They're all starters in the NHL, but they are not elite, especially compared to the upper echelon of what you see on a lot of these other teams here. Caleb, do you want to speed through all four and then kind of look at them as a whole, or do you want to break down Canada first here?
Let's break down Canada first.
Okay, let's do that. All
We
right.
can go through them one by one.
So they kind of have this broken into lines. I don't think that these are going to be the official ones, honestly, but clearly they do
No.
sort of have a order here. And obviously at the top here, you see Connor McDavid, Mitch Marner, Sam Reinhart, Brad Marchand, Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon. And when you see a top six like that, it's going to be pretty hard to beat. Those are six of the best players in the NHL right now, without a shadow of a doubt, and it just keeps on getting better. Like, I think with this Team Canada team, more than anything else, if you want to look at the positives first, they have an insane forward core. I mean, you can tell that when building this team, they left off a few names because they wanted to have some guys who are there more for more defensive reasons, maybe some more like physical reasons. You want a few guys who can push some guys around. I'm thinking like power forwards like Mark Stone, who maybe wouldn't be on this list if we're just talking about skill or if we were just talking about overall stats, but they're here to just add to the team. I don't know. I would say that Canada probably where they shine is absolutely the forward core. I think that they probably have the best forwards out of the entire bunch. I don't know about you, Caleb, but yeah, I think they'd be my pick.
In terms of the best forwards,
Yeah.
I could see that. I think I would agree with that. I think it's yeah, it's obviously goalie where their team is a little bit like these are by far the worst goalies out of any of the four teams, and I think that's going to be a big concern. I mean, we talked about it a little bit before we got the podcast started in terms of goaltenders can get hot, right? Like it's a streaky position, so it's maybe not the worst position to be bad at, but it's also a very essential position. Like a lot of the times, it doesn't matter how good the rest of your team is playing if your goalie's playing like a slice of Swiss cheese. So, I mean, these guys have all been streaky, like and Montembeault especially. I mean, I know he's a third string guy, but to that point, you look at another team where it's like the U.S.'s third string guy is Jeremy. Yeah, but still, it's not as a point to say like, oh, Montembeault is going to cost them the tournament because I don't think he's going to get any playing time. It's the point is to say, in comparison, look at where that third position is for other teams, where it's like the U.S.'s third goalie is Swayman. It's like that shows you kind of the disparity between those teams. Even like a Gustafsson for Sweden versus Montembeault isn't a favorable comparison. Or even I go as far to say is like Luckinen for for Finland. It's closer, but I still would take Luckinen at this point. It's that goalie position is really poor. And I mean, Binnington has had his moments, but he is very streaky and definitely not up to the level of a Hallebuck, a Markstrom, or a Saros. But those forwards are good. And I mean, I think my worry is again just on the defensive side of it, especially at goalie. And I mean, Canada's defense is very good. It's not slacking,
Yeah.
but I still would take a lot of the other defensive groups. But forwards,
Okay.
especially, yes, Canada I think has the best group, even though some of the other countries, especially the U.S., namely, do have formidable forward groups.
No, absolutely. I think that would have been my next point too. While I do think that Canada has the best forward group, I would not argue with anybody who says that the U.S. is better, or at the very least on par, because I do think that it is very close. I think it's going to be a toss-up. I don't think Canada has a good enough forward core for that to be the reason they beat the U.S., truthfully. I would not go as far to say that. I think for what they lack in net, they make up for on talent throughout the rest of the team. But I still think that there is absolutely a chance that what everybody is sort of predicting here, which is that Canada is going to struggle a bit, could happen, because they really aren't as deep as they would have been 10 years ago or 20 years ago. They just don't have that same amount of talent, and the rest of the world has caught up. I do agree with what you said in net. I think that without a shadow of a doubt, Canada just doesn't have that guy. They don't have that Carey Price. They don't have that Brodeur. They don't have that Patrick Waugh. They just don't have that big name guy who's going to be able to make saves when the defense can't do it for him. I think that that's going to be a big thing for this Canadian team this year, is just, can Jordan Binnington get hot when Team Canada needs him? Because I think more than likely he is going to be the number one guy. I don't know if that's been announced, whether or not. Probably not. But if I were to predict it, I think Binnington probably will. He definitely has the most experience. He has a cup under his name. I guess Aiden Hill does too. But regardless, I do think it's going to be an interesting thing with this Team Canada team. I think a lot of people are writing them out right off the jump. I think they still can be absolutely dangerous. Any team that has Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon potentially playing on the same line is going to be insane. They're going to be hard to stop for anybody. I don't care who the goalie is on the other side. They're not going to be able to pitch a shutout against a line like that. It's just not going to happen. So I think it's not going to be... This Canadian team is going to have to beat the brakes off of teams offensively, but against a team like the U.S. who can absolutely score at the same rate, it's going to be interesting to see whether Jordan Binnington can keep up. But we can move on. We've talked about Canada for 8 minutes, so avoiding wanting to have this be a stupid long segment, we can move on to the next North American team, being the U.S., which we already sort of talked about it. Very strong forward core. You could definitely make the argument that it's deeper than Team Canada. That defensive core is very impressive as well, with a lot of big names. There's a lot of names that were left off of this Team U.S. defense that definitely could have made Canada's, for example. But and then obviously the big names in net is a big factor as well. Obviously Connor Hellebuck, Jake Ottinger, Jeremy Swayman. All three are better than Jordan Binnington by quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think just looking at this roster, in my opinion, this would be my number one roster going into the Four Nations. And I think it just kind of speaks to how things have evened out here, in terms of, because I mean, we haven't seen international hockey be played at this level since what was it? Was 2014 the last time we would have seen this? 10 years ago.
Olympics, but that was
the last Olympics.
There was
the
World
2016
Cup
World Cup of hockey.
Yeah.
But that's still like 8 years ago. And they did the whole weird Team North America thing. Anyway, like the last real like big international, like purely by country thing was like 10 years ago. And so it kind of shows how much things have evened out over time, to say like normally you go into an Olympics and Canada very clearly has the best roster. The US could compete with it
so much better. I think that's
the US
like,
has gotten,
everybody's quick to compliment like Europe for how much it's improved, and that's very fair too. The US has insane talent right now. I think I know that's been a big conversation. The U.S. is a favorite for a lot of people. Like you said it, I'll say it as well. The U.S. has the best team. Like they should be the favorite going into this. It's going to be very, very interesting, I think, to watch this team, especially with just looking at the young guys that they have coming up as well. Things aren't going to slow down for the U.S. This is a norm. This is going to be a thing that's going to be happening for a long time now. With the U.S. if Canada doesn't keep up, the U.S. is going to start to dominate hockey a little bit.
Yeah, and especially
this is our thing.
Yeah, no, I know, and it is scary because it's not just that it's to me, it's that it's the most well balanced roster out of any of them, to where I don't really see a weak spot on it. Where
Yeah.
you could say the forward group is less talented than Canada's potentially, but it's not. It's
Yeah.
pretty close.
It's
I
close
mean,
enough
like
that it won't matter.
when you have a guy like Jack Hughes as your third center down the line, like you have a pretty good roster. It's very talented up and down the line, and when you have that good of a defense and especially that good of goaltending, like the goalies, the U.S. goalies, I think would be the strongest position group out of any position group in the tournament, in my opinion. Like Hellebuyck, Ottinger, and Swayman. I mean, Swayman maybe not, but otherwise, if you just said like name the top 3 goalies, maybe Shesterkin would fit in there, but otherwise, like those are like 3 of the top 5 goalies.
3 of the top 5, yeah, sure. I'd give you that.
Which is still crazy, that they all play for the same country. If I were a betting man, I would be placing bets on this group to win. Yeah. If it's a U.S.-Canada matchup, I don't necessarily think it's going to go well for Canada unless McDavid or McKinnon goes off.
Which I don't think is unrealistic, to be fair.
No.
I do think that if Canada beats the U.S. in any game, it's going to be like 5-4. You know what I mean? It's going to be that kind of hockey. It's going to be some all-star game hockey, because that is what Team Canada is going to need to win.
But will that U.S. defense and that U.S. goaltending give up 5 goals? Right? Like that's the question.
I think anybody on a bad night can give up 5 goals to Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon, but I think it's going to be tough. They've got, because I mean, this U.S. defense has 3 defensive pairings that they shouldn't be afraid to put out there against that McDavid line. So that's tough too. Like what are the matchups you look at as a coach? Like this team's just incredible. I mean, I would make the argument that this U.S. team isn't quite. It's very talent heavy, but it's not. Like I'd argue, Team Canada was built, especially in the bottom half there. They were looking for role players, like they were looking for guys who can play on the PK, not necessarily their point getters because they know they already have this. This team USA is just filled with a bunch of scorers, which I think is going to work in their favor because they absolutely have. I mean, there's absolutely room for that in this type of hockey. It's international play, right? That's the type of hockey you're playing. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this team does against all 3 other teams. I think probably the most interesting team out of all 4, because we knew what we were getting out of Team Canada. We knew what we were getting out of Team USA. And to a degree, I think we knew what we were getting out of Finland. But in my opinion, this team Sweden's pretty damn good. They've got a formidable roster here with a lot of very strong defenders, I think. They've got some good goalies there, obviously, with Markstrom, Ullmark, and Gustafsson. They're going to be pretty set there. That defense is loaded. That is a loaded defense. I don't know. I think Sweden absolutely has some upset potential here if they can trick a team into a low-scoring game. Like, if they can hold off that Team Canada, I don't know, man. They might be able to... I think my shocker pick for the gold medal game of this 4 Nations face-off would be Sweden and the U.S. And I feel like that's heresy. I feel like I should be put in prison here in Canada, but I feel like that would be something that it would be shocking, but I'm not afraid to try and predict it here. Where, I don't know, man. This Sweden team, they're fun. They look like they can definitely beat a team on a bad night.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think from top to bottom, I would prefer the U.S. and Canada rosters.
Yeah.
Just generally, I do think this Sweden roster is in kind of the same tier, and I think it speaks to how exciting this tournament is going to be. Because I think the teams are more even than ever. Because you kind of went into speaking of that last Olympics, we went into, I believe it was Canada and Sweden in the gold medal game, and I mean. You never really know, but we all kind of went into that thinking, well, Canada will take this one pretty easily.
That was probably the best Team Canada team, or one of the best Team Canada teams ever, too. So I mean,
yeah, that's part of it too, right?
Yeah.
That's part of it. Is that there's that disparity that existed there, is no longer quite as apparent. And yeah, I think if you're going to highlight any group, like you said, the defense is the group you're going to highlight. It'd be interesting to see if Carlson still has the kind of juice at this point. If he
Oh,
like that would be kind of
I
my
I think he's gonna step on the gas a little bit for this. Like
yeah like
he's showed it because we've been saying that about Carlson for the last 5 years, and there's
no
part of me that
that's
just
true.
thinks like I think that he's got it for one last tournament. I think that if there's anybody on any of these, you know what? If I were to give a prediction, I think Carlson would have a pretty good tournament because this is big. I think this Sweden team right here absolutely has the talent to fuck some stuff up for a lot of people. If Sweden wins this Four Nations thing, are you kidding me? That would be so awesome. Like, cause that
Yeah,
if there was ever I'm not saying that like, no, I'm not saying that Sweden's got a bad team because that's the exact opposite of what I've been saying this whole time. But if Sweden won this whole thing, that would that like I don't know what the whole world would light on fire. Like it wouldn't make sense. Everybody's been going into this saying, "Oh, U.S. is unbeatable." Oh, but Canada's been this unbeatable team for 20 years now. They're not going to let off easy. And then Sweden just slides in and takes it. Like that doesn't make any sense. But they got the talent to do it. They can do it. Like
yeah.
got some big names who can score. I think that they're probably one of I I don't know. I think they're maybe the best defensive team in the tournament. I feel like that's crazy to say. I don't know. There's something about this for me where like I look at like Team US's defense and sure it's more talented, but I look at the names here and I feel like I just don't know. I feel like all like take Eric Carlson who is a defensive guy out of this. They've got six guys here who can lock down people. Like they can mess them. They're gonna mess up some offenses in this tournament. And if Jacob Markstrom's hot, if Allmark's hot, I don't. I mean, Gustafson's clearly the third guy, but if he's hot for whatever reason, if he's playing, I mean, you never know. You never know. I think this team could do something.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I mean, like it's a lot of talent on there, and I mean we focused on the defense and the goaltending, but it's not like that forward group is anything
No.
to
Yeah.
to sneeze at either. Like it's incredibly deep, and especially something that I can't say for the defense as much, but that forward group, lots of young talent, down that lineup. Like I'm looking at a guy like Leo Carlson or a guy like Lucas Raymond. It's pretty impressive,
Yeah.
in terms of some of the young talent they've got there.
I mean,
Yeah, no, I think it's a very good team that definitely has the potential to win it if they're not, even though they're not being focused on as much.
it's hard to find a guy in that forward core who's probably over the age of like 32, 33. I think
Yeah,
like I mean I don't know how old Nyquist is at this point, but I guess he's probably getting up there. William Carlson's
I feel
probably in
like
his 30s.
is
Uh,
Zibanejad getting up there?
he's probably 30 at this point, huh? I yeah
He's
like
31. Yeah,
okay. Well, like even at that point, like you look at the guys who are just absolutely ready to fill in for this roster. Like this team, Sweden's going to be around for a while. Like they've been good. Obviously, they were in that gold medal in Sochi. Like it's been a known thing that Sweden's going to be good in the hockey world for the next little while. But I don't know. This is a better showing than anything else, man. They're kind of one big forward superstar away being actually legitimately in the conversation with the U.S. Because I mean, they've got the stars on defense, but I mean that is the one thing this roster is missing. Like you pluck like McDavid off of that off of that Team Canada team and put him on Sweden, this team would be insane. Like that is the one thing they're really missing here. But I don't know. I don't think it's gonna hurt them. I think they'll score fine anyway. Like when you've got a defense like that, you'll be fine. They're definitely gonna. I think that they'll probably pull an upset win at some point against one of either U.S. or Canada. I actually don't know what the format of this tournament looks like now that I think about it. I don't know how many games they all play.
I believe it's a round robin where they all play each other, and then I think that seeds the tournament. I
Oh,
believe.
okay.
Um,
Well, I would not be surprised to see Sweden maybe pull an upset against Canada or U.S. And then my big shocker one would be if Sweden somehow. I don't think they beat the U.S. in like a game to go to the gold, but I think that they could pull some bullshit against Team Canada. I think this is a weaker Canada team that could potentially lose
Yeah.
to a team like this. But yeah, there's a reason.
So
Or if you want to, yeah, if you have a last
Oh,
word.
I was just gonna. Well, I just have the in terms of the structure I have in front of me. So,
Oh, okay.
it is a round robin. Teams will earn 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points for an overtime or shootout win, 1 point for an overtime or shootout loss, and 0 points for a regulation loss. Each team will play 3 games, so they'll all play each other once. The 2 teams with the most points will advance to a 1-game final.
Oh. Oh, that's kind of lame.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. There's only 4 teams.
I guess.
Because otherwise, everybody would make the playoffs, and the round robin games would be useless.
Yeah,
Well,
that's fair.
I don't think you could have done it any other way because I think
No, that's fair.
yeah, because otherwise, like, why play the round robin games at all?
No,
And then not everybody gets to play each other.
I wasn't thinking about that. You're right. I wouldn't be surprised. I guess what I mean is I wouldn't be surprised to see Canada lose to the U.S. and then an upset loss to Sweden. Sweden beats Canada and Finland, and suddenly Sweden's playing the U.S. in the final. That's not
Yeah.
impossible. Like I don't know. I don't think people should be counting out Sweden. But we can move on. We're already at 21 minutes, so we can move on to the last team who, without a shadow of a doubt, if you are looking for the underdog of this tournament, it is probably Finland. They are very good in their own right. They have a lot of very strong talent. I would argue that Barkov is the superstar on this Finland team. Same with Rantanen. Both of them are the superstars of this team that arguably Sweden is missing. But what they lack is depth. They just don't have the same depth that all the previous 3 teams have. I mean, Capo Caco doesn't really have any right to be on a third line in an international tournament that involves where in a tournament where we're seeing guys like Connor Bedard getting taken off of Team Canada because they just don't have enough spots. Like, you just look down the lineups and it's just not. I don't know. It's not on the same level as the either 3. I would argue that Canada, U.S., and Sweden are all on one tier, and then Finland's on a tier below it. They certainly are very, very talented, but I don't know. I think they're going to struggle in this tournament quite a bit. To give a prediction.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think the key point you make there is that it's the depth that's the issue, because I think the top talent, especially because the players that are highlighted in blue are the players that were announced, like, because this was announced in 2 stages, right, where they announced the first 6 and then they announced the rest of the roster. More or less, you stack up those 6 highlighted players against the 6 highlighted players for the other teams across this tournament, and I think it's pretty even. Like, I mean, I'd take Barkov versus any of the top stars. I mean, Aho as a second-line center, I'd take against any of these other second-line centers. Rantanen on the wing, same thing. Saros in goal. Would you disagree with? Yeah, Saros in goal.
I disagree on the Aho thing. I think that
really.
Would you compare him to the likes of McKinnon, or like who does the U.S. have as a second line center?
McKinnon, no. Eichel is who the.
Okay, Eichel, I'll give you. Eichel is fair, but I
also they currently have. Maybe this is a little bit nitpicky. But Canada's current second line center isn't McKinnon. It's Crosby.
I know. Okay, that's fair.
So. I think my point stands.
Okay, but if we're talking about the guy who is more than likely going to be second line center, I don't.
But that's a Canada outlier thing. Aho very much fits in with that group, and I would like consider him alongside those. Same with Heiskanen. Like, Heiskanen is a great defender, and then Saros especially.
I think
Lundell is the only one where I look at funny in terms of that 6. But truthfully,
yeah, I think they should have given the 6th spot to Hintz. I think that would have made a lot more sense.
Me too. Me too.
I think that
not that it matters all that much.
It doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter at all. Absolutely not. But
it's to the point where you can even see in that top 6 where it's like that 6th spot you start to have to reach a little bit, and yes, that's where the depth falls off. And you almost wonder if there's.
They clearly just had to pick 2 defensemen, but
yeah, yeah, like Yeah, it's hard to say. I think I don't know. I think yeah, it's very much depth, and it's you wonder if it's a thing where it's like this team will get better as development keeps happening. We see younger players start coming in, but yeah, as of right now, they're definitely not at the same level. And I think I kind of like um, the theory you put out there before we were doing the
Yeah.
podcast that Finland was kind of put in as a Russia replacement team, since obviously you can't have them in the tournament.
I
Because
think,
if a theoretical Russian roster was in this tournament, it would be very even across the board. Um,
yeah.
but with this Finland roster, I think they're very much kind of the odd team out. They'll look to play spoiler though. I mean, they have like it's an international
Any
tournament.
team
All
that
these
has
all of these teams have
Barkov,
the talent to play spoiler.
any team that has Barkov as their first line center, after what I saw him do in the Stanley Cup Finals last year to McDavid, has the ability to pull out a game against any of these teams. And they have
Yep.
Saros in net. They have Barkov as a first line center, and that defense, it's fine. I think that I think that they could absolutely pull a game against Sweden. I would call that an upset. I don't think it would surprise that many people, but it would be an upset. I think that this team, if Canada's having a bad night, can beat Canada. I think that would absolutely be a shocker. If they beat the US, now that would be fucking nuts, and I'd be all for it. But you never know. I think I think that a team with Barkov as your top line center, Saros in goal, and a defense that's good enough can beat anyone. Like that's that. It's as simple as that. I think Finland's going to need a lot of luck. That's the main difference. I think Canada needs their skilled players to really, really show off. U.S. just needs to do exactly what people are predicting them to do, which is dominate. Sweden needs to surprise some people, and Finland needs a whole lot of luck. It's kind of just as simple as that. Because yeah, absolutely, they are the Russia fill-in. Because that is the thing. I think if Russia was here, truthfully, with how good that Sweden team is, I think that they might be better than Russia. Maybe, I don't know, but it would certainly be interesting. I think that Finland is absolutely the fourth team there. I mean, we've kind of talked about it, but the clear ranking is U.S., Canada, Sweden, Finland. That's pretty clear. I think you ask just about anybody who knows hockey, they tell you the same thing. Looking at all four of these rosters, it's but the tough thing with these types of rosters, where it's literally an all-star game to a certain degree with the names on here, is anybody can win on any given night. It's one hockey game. It's not a 7-game series, so you never know what'll happen. I'm very excited for it just for that reason, because boy, you know what's funny? I'll be cheering for Team Canada. I am a Canadian, but fuck, if Sweden or Finland pulls this thing out, I would be a happy man.
Yep.
I'm all for that as well. I think that'd be so awesome. That'd be so great for the
Yep.
sport. Because I think that would be
I'm
the
I'm
biggest fuck you to North American hockey that we've ever seen, really. Like,
no, I'm with you there, and especially as the first international hockey event in 8 to 10 years, however you quantify it. Yeah, that's a big statement, and it's happening soon. That's another thing that kind of strikes me,
yeah.
is that it's happening in February. Like this
Oh
is
yeah.
not that far out. Like, we're gonna know the
How
results
can
of
you
these games
not be
pretty soon.
excited for
And
this? Like this is gonna be
yeah,
so fun.
I almost wonder because this is like the replacement of the All-Star game more or less this year. Uh, an All-Star game has never had this much buzz. Uh,
Oh yeah.
if, in my opinion, I would do something like this every year if I'm the NHL personally, or at least
Yeah.
every couple years because you
Every
can't
couple
like,
years, you can't ruin it. I'd get mad at them for doing it every year because then you're doing it for the money. I think this has to be something that's every couple of years. It's just it needs to be an Olympics type thing. Maybe that's just me.
yeah.
I think if you do it every
No,
year, it
I could see
becomes
that
an
argument.
all-star game, and players don't care.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's true. Well, who knows? Who knows? Let's start with the first one and see how that goes. Either
Yeah.
way, I'm excited for it.
Oh, how could you not be? Like this is just gonna be so fun because I think the issue with the All Star game is absolutely the fact that players don't give a shit. They like, oh, these players who make $10 million a year have the chance to win $100,000 split between all 12 of them. Like I'm sure that's gonna really really pump them up, right? Like, I don't know. I think this is a perfect example where yeah, it hasn't been done in 8 years. All of these guys want to win it. Like even the Team Canada guys who are at this point for Crosby. How many medals for his country do you think he has at this point, right? Like even guys like him, he knows this is. I mean, he'll probably be around in 2026, but you never know what's going on in his head, right? This could be the last time we see Crosby in a Team Canada jersey. I mean,
Yeah.
to a guy like that, you know he's going to put it all on the line. I think a lot of guys like on Finland are looking at the way that all of this is being reported and going, and Sweden, I'd say for both of them. Like I think this is going to be great. I think we're going to see some of the best hockey we've that's ever been played. Frankly, like the highest skill, because you can't beat a game like this.
Yeah.